The moment the shuttle hatch hissed open, Nathaniel Griggs regretted agreeing to the transfer. The air smelled like boiled copper and wet moss, thick and cloying, and the walls of the alien veterinary facility pulsed faintly, as if the place were alive or pretending to be. He adjusted the strap of his duffel bag over his shoulder and took a cautious step down the ramp. Two aliens waited at the base. The taller one, with 4 narrow legs and a set of arms that folded in on themselves like broken umbrellas, introduced himself in a deep, almost sleepy tone. "I am Varn. I oversee medical intake." The shorter creature, a squat figure, bulbous around the hips with a head like a wrinkled squash, glanced at a tablet and said, "You are the human veterinarian we requested. Nathaniel Griggs." "That's me," Nathaniel said, offering a hand reflexively. Varn blinked slowly at it, then turned and started walking. "No need for tactile rituals. Come, we begin orientation." Nathaniel sighed and followed them inside. The facility, deep within the communal sector of Station Heliox Delta, was the galaxy's largest interspecies veterinary research institute. He'd been brought in after a diplomatic exchange program highlighted the human talent for cross-species behavioral interpretation. The aliens called it instinctive empathy. Nathaniel called it growing up with 3 dogs, 2 cats, and a suicidal ferret named Beans. Still, none of that prepared him for the patient waiting in Bay 7. The creature was enormous, roughly the size of a city bus, with a thick, muscular body covered in an oily sheen of black fur. Its snout protruded like a crocodile's, but was filled with serrated teeth that glistened under the bay lights. Its limbs were disproportionately long, with talons that dragged slightly against the floor whenever it shifted. "What the hell is that?" Nathaniel asked, stepping back instinctively. Varn didn't move. "Species is designated Arxurian Trelvok, apex predator from Quadrant 6. Injured during transport, we attempted sedation. It resisted." The squat alien, whose name Nathaniel hadn't caught, added, "3 of our staff are in recovery, 1 remains in triage. We require your expertise." Nathaniel stared at the beast. It was watching him. Not just looking, but tracking, eyes unwavering. "You want me to treat that?" "It is not a request," Varn said. "It is the assignment." Nathaniel dropped his bag on a nearby bench and rubbed his face. "All right. I'll need a full scan, restraint protocols, and a secondary bay cleared in case this thing decides to bite my head off." "You are not concerned?" the squat alien asked. "I'm absolutely concerned," he muttered, pulling on gloves. "But I've seen worse attitudes from golden retrievers on bath day." The scan came back with a dislocated shoulder and several lacerations along the creature's flank. It had clearly fought something or someone before capture. The problem was, every time an alien vet approached the Trelvok, it lunged, snarling and thrashing until the bay doors rattled. Nathaniel stepped up to the transparent barrier and watched the Trelvok for a long minute. Then he tapped a control panel, and the barrier hissed open. "What are you doing?" Varn demanded. "Trying something you haven't," Nathaniel said, walking in slowly, palms open, "not treating it like a monster." The Trelvok growled low in its throat, a deep rumble that vibrated Nathaniel's ribs. He kept moving slow and steady until he was within arm's reach. The creature's eyes narrowed. "Easy, big guy, I'm not here to hurt you." It didn't move. Nathaniel knelt beside the injured flank and gently pressed a probe against the wound. The Trelvok shuddered but didn't attack. "That's it," he said quietly. "See, doesn't have to be a fight." 30 minutes later, he had the shoulder reset and the wounds cleaned. The Trelvok even tolerated a light sedative to help with the pain. When he stepped out of the bay, Varn was frozen in place. "You entered without armor." "Without restraints, it could have crushed you." Nathaniel peeled off his gloves. "Yeah, but he didn't. He's just scared. Probably hasn't been handled by anything but nets and shock prods since he was caught. He is designed for violence, aren't most animals?" "Until they aren't," Nathaniel shrugged. "He's just a big cuddly softie underneath all that teeth." The room went silent, then a siren blared, "Containment breach," a voice echoed overhead. Bay 4, Nathaniel spun. That's the reptilian ward, right? Varn was already racing down the corridor. Nathaniel followed. When they arrived, the scene was chaos. A Sarnakian lizard beast roughly the size of a horse and covered in emerald scales was thrashing against the containment field, its eyes wide and foaming at the mouth. Two alien staff were pinned behind a toppled supply cart, blood pooling beneath one of them. "Dart it," someone yelled. "No time," another shouted. "It's overheating," Nathaniel didn't think. He grabbed a tranquilizer gun from the wall and vaulted over the barrier. The beast turned toward him immediately, roaring. "Come on then, you angry iguana," he muttered, raising the gun. The dart hit just under its jaw. The beast staggered, swayed, and collapsed with a thunderous thud. As Nathaniel checked the vitals on the downed staff, Varn approached. "You continue to disregard protocol." "Yeah, well, protocols don't mean much if your team is dead," Varn stared at him. "Your methods are reckless. They're effective." That night, Nathaniel returned to Bay 7. The Trelvok was curled in the corner, breathing slow and deep. When Nathaniel stepped inside, it lifted its head but didn't growl. "See, we're getting somewhere." He crouched beside it and began running a scanner over the creature's ribs. As he worked, the Trelvok pressed its snout gently against his shoulder, exhaling a warm gust of air. Nathaniel froze. Then he laughed softly. "Told you. Big cuddly Softie." The next morning, the station's director summoned him. "You've been here less than 72 hours and already caused multiple procedural violations," the director snapped. "And yet the Trelvok is stable, the Sarnakian is sedated. The injured staff are alive." Nathaniel shifted in his chair, still sore from the dive he took in Bay 4. "So, am I fired or promoted?" "Neither, you are reassigned. Effective immediately, you are the primary caretaker for the Trelvok." Nathaniel blinked. "That's not a punishment. It is not meant to be." Reassignment meant he now had to monitor the creature's recovery, including daily rehab sessions, feeding, and behavioral analysis. It also meant he had to sleep in quarters 2 doors down from the Trelvok's bay. He didn't mind. After a week of sessions, the creature was responding to commands, accepting feedings without aggression, and even tolerating basic physical therapy. The station staff, however, remained on edge. One morning, while preparing a protein mixture for the Trelvok, an alien technician approached him cautiously. "You believe it is safe as any animal in pain," Nathaniel replied. "But it consumed its own handler during capture." Nathaniel paused. "I read the report." "That wasn't consumption. That was panic. The handler had a shock baton." "You excuse the behavior. I understand the context." Later that week, the Trelvok's wound reopened during a rehab session. It thrashed, howling in pain, and slammed against the bay wall. The impact cracked the panel. Alarms blared and containment teams rushed in with tranquilizer rifles raised. Nathaniel threw himself between them and the creature. "Back off. He's hurt, not hostile." "It is unstable. It's injured." The team hesitated. The Trelvok groaned, slumping to the floor. Nathaniel turned to Varn, who had arrived seconds later. "You want him to recover, right? Then stop treating him like a time bomb." Varn stared at the trembling creature. "You believe he trusts you?" "I know he does." The next 24 hours were tense. Nathaniel had to restitch the wound himself, aided only by a hovering assistant drone. He worked through the night, sweat soaking his shirt, hands trembling from fatigue. By dawn, the creature was resting, and Nathaniel collapsed into a chair beside the bay, too tired to move. He woke to the sound of the Trelvok's claws tapping gently against the glass. It was standing, watching him. Not hungrily, not angrily, just watching. Nathaniel stood slowly, stretching. "Morning, big guy, ready for round 2, the Trelvok huffed. Somewhere down the hall, a technician muttered, "It's not right, that thing should be in a cage." Nathaniel didn't reply. He walked into the bay, placed a firm hand on the creature's side, and began the morning scan. Whatever it was, it trusted him. And that, he thought, was a good place to start. The Trelvok's breathing was still uneven when Nathaniel stepped back from the scanner, wiping his hands on the front of his scrubs. It had tolerated the wound cleaning without sedation this time, though the tremor in its rear leg suggested nerve involvement. He made a mental note to request a neurostim unit, then remembered that the requisition system required 3 layers of clearance and an incident report in triplicate. "Forget it," he muttered. The Trelvok blinked at him slowly. "I'm talking to myself again, huh?" He pressed 2 fingers gently along the edge of the creature's flank and watched its eye twitch. "Yeah, thought so. Sciatic branch, probably compressed." "I'll improvise." He left the bay and found one of the station's assistant techs pacing by the observation panel. She was tall and beetle-thin, with an exoskeletal hinge along her neck that clicked whenever she turned her head. "We have no protocol for that." Her accent was clipped, syllables stacked like boxes. "Not asking for protocol, just a portable pulse stim. Doesn't even have to be calibrated. I'll do it manually." The technician's mouthparts fluttered. "Those are restricted for neural mapping. And right now, he's mapping the inside of his own spine with pain. Either you help me or I start wiring one together from leftover drone parts and a blender." She hesitated, then flicked a claw toward the back corridor. "Maintenance locker." "Bottom shelf. Appreciate it." As he walked, he passed a trio of station staff whispering in the hallway. One of them, a green-skinned quadruped with a larynx pouch that inflated when agitated, made eye contact and immediately looked away. He ignored them. Back in the bay, he adjusted the stim's output, then pressed it gently against the Trelvok's side. The beast flinched, grumbled, then slowly relaxed. Its limbs uncoiled like vines in the sun. Nathaniel sat on the floor beside it, leaning back against the wall. "You know, where I come from, people keep dogs that would absolutely lose a fight to you, and we still put sweaters on them in winter." The Trelvok made a low, rumbling sound. Not a growl, more like a snore trying to become a purr. 2 days later, the station's environmental systems glitched. Temperatures dropped across the medical wing and the artificial humidity crashed to desert levels. The Trelvok's skin dried fast, cracking along the healing lacerations. It started pacing again, restless, tail swiping the walls. "I need heat lamps," Nathaniel told the logistics officer, a floating orb with a single luminous eye. "Thermal emitters are reserved for surgical recovery," it said, bobbing slightly in the air. "Then you've got a recovering surgical patient who just happens to be covered in fur and muscle and could bench press a hover bike. I require species designation for requisition." Nathaniel pointed toward the holding bay. "Species, herding," the orb blinked. "Fine, I'll go steal one from the orthopedics lab. Let me know how that plays out in the incident report." The lamp was installed within the hour. That evening, while Nathaniel cataloged the Trelvok's muscle responsiveness with a handheld stim probe, 2 research officers entered the bay unannounced. One was a long-limbed avian with mirrored eyes. The other was short and gelatinous, its body pulsing in time with the lights. "Apologies for the intrusion," said the avian. "We are conducting behavioral assessments. Could have scheduled that. We prefer unaltered conditions." Nathaniel gestured toward the beast. "He's not a zoo exhibit." "You want to stare at something, go to the observation deck." The gelatinous one jiggled. "It has not attempted violence in several days, because it's not in agony anymore." The avian tilted its head. "We question whether its current behavior is suppressive or indicative of cognitive trust." Nathaniel stood. "He's not repressing anything, he's adapting. Same as any organism when it's not being tased every time it breathes. We will require access to the internal logs. Then file a request." "I'm not giving you anything without clearance." The avian's feathers rustled. "You are impeding research." "I'm treating a patient." After they left, Nathaniel sat beside the Trelvok again. The creature had curled into a tighter coil than usual, tail wrapped protectively along its side. "They're going to keep pushing," he said, "but you'll be out of here before they get the chance to turn you into a case study." The next morning, a shipment arrived from Earth. Inside were two crates, one containing a batch of human-grade nutrient gel packs, and the other, a care package wrapped in brown paper and labeled in large block letters. From Mom. He opened the second one first. Inside were socks, a jar of peanut butter, and a handwritten note that read, "Stay warm. Don't touch anything poisonous. Love, Mom." He tossed the socks into his locker and carried the peanut butter to the bay. The Trelvok sniffed the container warily. "Don't worry, I'm not testing it on you. Just figured it might help with my blood sugar before I start poking you again." He dipped a finger into the jar and licked it clean. The Trelvok's head tilted. "Curious, huh? That's called peanut butter. It's made from ground legumes and the tears of allergic children." The creature inched forward and opened its mouth slightly. "Okay, let's not get carried away. It's not exactly part of your dietary plan." The Trelvok growled softly. "Fine, one taste. But don't tell anyone." He scooped a small bit onto the back of a surgical glove and held it out. The creature sniffed, then flicked it into its mouth with a surprisingly delicate tongue. Its eyes flared wide and it made an odd grunting cough. "Yeah, that's the joy of emulsified plant protein. Hits you in the soul." Later that day, Varn appeared at the bay's threshold. "We have received reports. Let me guess, irregular feeding behavior, among others. You are unconventional. Thanks." Varn approached the edge of the enclosure. The Trelvok lifted its head and watched him. "I have reviewed the recovery metrics. They exceed projections." "I'm not surprised." Varn shifted his weight. "There is concern among administration that your methods may compromise containment." Containment was never the problem. "You just didn't know what it looked like when it worked." Varn studied the beast for a moment longer. "You have been approved for supervised reintegration trials." Nathaniel blinked. "Wait, you want me to walk him?" "Not precisely." "Ambulatory assessment within secure boundaries." Still sounds like a walk. The trial took place 48 hours later. The Trelvok was fitted with a harness, reinforced with titanium threading and a stabilizer collar. Nathaniel held the lead line loosely, guiding the creature through the medical wing's empty exercise corridor. 24 staff members lined the upper gallery, watching. "Easy steps," Nathaniel murmured. The Trelvok walked slowly, claws clicking against the floor. It didn't flinch at the overhead lights or the buzzing vents. Its gait was still uneven, left hind leg dragging slightly, but it moved with clear intent. A loud clang echoed as a service drone dropped a tray from the ceiling vent. The Trelvok froze. Nathaniel didn't tighten the lead. "You're okay. Just noise." The creature's shoulders rose, then sank again as it exhaled. It kept walking. When they completed the circuit, a few of the observers began whispering among themselves. One clapped. A single alien with translucent skin and gill lines pulsing along its neck. Nathaniel led the Trelvok back to the bay and unlatched the harness. "You did good," he said. "Really good." The creature nuzzled his shoulder once, then curled up in its usual corner. That night, the station director called him into the administrative wing. The office was colder than the rest of the facility, and the walls were lined with trophies, preserved specimens, and anatomical models. "You've shifted the staff's perception," the director said. "Skepticism has become curiosity. I'll call that progress. It is dangerous." Nathaniel crossed his arms. "So is stagnation." The director placed a data pad on the desk. "We've received a request. The Trelvok Species Council is asking for its return. They cite rehabilitation progress as proof it can be reintroduced to its home enclave." Nathaniel frowned. "He's not ready. He's adapting, sure, but reintegration, that's a leap." "They disagree." "Then I want transfer oversight. I go with him." The director raised one brow. "You are not qualified in diplomatic transport." "No, but I'm the only one he trusts not to shoot him if he sneezes." A long silence followed. "Very well. Prepare for departure within the week, but understand if it falls apart, you will be held responsible." Nathaniel nodded once. Later, back in the bay, he sat beside the Trelvok for a long time. "They want you back home," he said. "I'm not sure what kind of welcome you'll get, but I'll be there." The Trelvok shifted slightly, tail thumping once against the floor, Nathaniel leaned his head back against the wall. "Just don't go turning into a diva on me. You may be a galactic apex predator, but you still drool in your sleep." The Trelvok snorted, and for the first time since he'd arrived, Nathaniel allowed himself to think it might actually work. The transport vessel assigned for the Trelvok's release was more cargo hauler than ambulance. It smelled faintly of ion lubricant and something sharp beneath it like scorched radish. Nathaniel stood on the reinforced loading platform, arms folded, watching as the final restraints were detached from the creature's harness. It had been sedated just enough to keep it compliant during boarding, though even groggy. It dwarfed the alien dockhands nervously hovering along the edge of the bay. "Is that the same one from Bay 7? One of them asked, pressing a flat palm to the side of his helmet. Nathaniel didn't look over. "No, this one's a big fan of jazz and collects porcelain eggs. Just looks similar." The dockhand blinked once and stepped back. The ship's primary custodian, a cylindrical alien with a thick ridge of bristles along its midsection, emerged from the access tunnel. Its translator emitted a low chime before speaking. "Cargo integrity must be validated before atmospheric exit. Is the specimen likely to rupture containment?" "No," said Nathaniel. "Unless someone decides to poke it with a cattle prod." The bristles shivered. "We are not in the habit of poking." "Great. Let's keep it that way." By the time the vessel detached from Station Heliox Delta, the Trelvok had started to rouse. Nathaniel sat opposite its containment pen, a compact space lined with padded walls and reinforced with kinetic dampeners. The creature's breathing was steady, though its ears twitched intermittently, a sign of mild disorientation, he guessed. He pulled out a portable monitor and checked the sedative markers. The half-life was almost up. "Hey," he said softly, "you're all right. Ship's a bit of a tin can, but they've got gravity and everything." The Trelvok blinked, then shifted its weight to press against the wall. Its tail curled once, then relaxed. "You're not gonna like landing," Nathaniel warned. "Atmospheric re-entry's rough on the joints. But I've got compression wraps and a mild muscle relaxant if you need it. No needles this time." There was a long pause. Then the Trelvok let out a low, brief exhale. "Yeah," said Nathaniel, leaning his head back against the wall. "I miss Bay 7 too." It took 6 hours to reach the Trelvok's homeworld, a planet wrapped in overlapping cloud bands and thick, roiling storms that barely cleared for ground navigation. The local authorities had provided a provisional landing zone several kilometers from the primary enclave, citing environmental instability near the settlement's core. Nathaniel suspected it had more to do with optics than soil erosion. The descent was jarring. The ship rocked violently for nearly 10 minutes, and at one point the artificial gravity flickered, causing both him and the Trelvok to slide 2 feet across the floor. He caught himself on the containment gate. The beast steadied itself with a low growl. "Yeah, I hate turbulence too," Nathaniel muttered, rubbing his shoulder. Once they landed, a delegation approached 3 tall figures with elongated skull ridges and jet-black skin that shimmered with bioluminescent patterns. Their translator units were embedded directly into their throats, pulsing blue with each breath. "You bring the injured kin," one said. "We receive." Nathaniel stepped forward, hands at his sides. "He's not just injured, he's recovering. Still needs monitored therapy, pain management, and someone who can read his body language." "You are not of the kin," the delegate replied. "No," Nathaniel said. "But I'm the one who kept him from bleeding out and tearing someone's arm off in the process. I'd like to see him through the transition." The delegate's bioluminescence dimmed momentarily, a signal of consideration, then a nod. "You follow." The terrain beyond the landing site was rugged, cracked stone shelves overgrown with thick, fibrous moss. The Trelvok walked beside him, tethered only by a loose lead. It moved with noticeable stiffness, but its posture was alert, ears rotating constantly. They reached the enclave after an hour. It wasn't what Nathaniel expected. The structures were low and wide, built into the base of a canyon, with open-air tunnels and windbreaks fashioned from woven metal mesh. Several smaller Trelvoks darted along the edges of the path, watching warily from behind latticework fences. The injured Trelvok stopped at the threshold. Nathaniel looked up at it, scared. It didn't move. "I get it," Nathaniel said. "You've been gone a while. They probably told stories about what happened to you. Maybe they're not sure what you are anymore." He reached out, not to coax or command, but to rest a hand lightly against its shoulder. "You don't have to prove anything. You survived. That's enough." The creature stepped forward. Inside the enclave, the mood was dense with tension. The other Trelvoks kept their distance and none approached. A central platform had been cleared, evidently for some kind of ceremony. Nathaniel stayed off to the side, watching as the creature he arrived with moved toward the center. It stood tall, shoulders squared. One of the elders, a Trelvok with deep scars along its snout and a missing digit, emerged from the far side of the clearing. It moved slowly, deliberately, before circling the returnee. There was no growl, no snarl, just a long, silent assessment. Then, to Nathaniel's surprise, the elder dipped its head. The others followed some quickly, others after hesitation. Nathaniel exhaled. "Well, guess that's a yes." The delegate approached him again. "You have done what was not expected. The kin accepts the wounded as whole." "He's not entirely whole," said Nathaniel. "He's still got that leg issue. If you've got a quiet place with a flat surface and enough space for me to stretch out a portable stim kit, I can show you how to keep the nerve pathways open." The delegate blinked. "You remain, just long enough to make sure he's got what he needs. Then I'll get out of your fur, or scales. Or whatever that is." Later, in a shaded shelter at the edge of the enclave, Nathaniel set up his stim pad on a flat stone slab. The Trelvok lay down with minimal fuss, clearly more comfortable here than in the ship. A young member of the enclave, a juvenile barely half his size, watched from a few feet away, mimicking Nathaniel's gestures as he adjusted the settings. "See this?" Nathaniel pointed to the dial. "Low frequency, just enough to tap the nerve clusters behind the femur. Don't go higher unless you want him to kick a hole in the wall." The juvenile nodded, then tried it on a practice pad. The pulse was gentle and the Trelvok barely twitched. "Perfect," said Nathaniel. "You've got a good touch." When the therapy session ended, the elder returned. It looked at Nathaniel, then at the stim pad, then back again. "You teach kin to tend kin." "They'll need it," Nathaniel said. "He's not the last one who'll come back hurt." The elder tilted its head slightly. "You adapt." Nathaniel shrugged. "So does he." By sunset, his gear was packed and the shuttle crew gave the all-clear for return. As he approached the edge of the enclave, the Trelvok followed him a few steps before stopping. Nathaniel turned. "You're good now." "They've got you." The creature lowered its head slowly, then raised it again. "I'll tell them back on Heliox that you're not a monster," he said. "Though the peanut butter thing will be hard to explain." He climbed into the shuttle as the winds picked up and the canyon shadows stretched long. From the viewport, he saw the Trelvok watching until the transport lifted out of range. Back aboard the station 2 days later, Varn met him at the docking bay. "You returned intact." "Mostly," Nathaniel said. "Ran out of socks." Varn looked at him for a long moment. "And the creature?" "Home." With a limp but standing. Varn considered this. "You have redefined our expectations." Nathaniel smiled faintly. "Yeah, we do that." He walked past the security checkpoint, duffel over his shoulder, and headed toward the medical wing. Bay 7 was quiet now, empty but for a few storage racks and a faint smell of antiseptic. He stood there for a moment, staring at the space once occupied by the creature no one wanted to touch. Then he turned off the lights and walked out.